The small, fluorescent-lit backroom smelled of damp cotton and steam. The rhythmic clack-clack-clack of the vintage Singer sewing machine vibrated through the floorboards. Outside, the rain beat a relentless tattoo against the window pane. Inside, Elena Vance adjusted her reading glasses and guided a strip of navy silk under the presser foot. Her fingers were calloused, decorated with faint, pale scars from years of pinpricks and razor-sharp shears. For 15 years, this small basement room in Columbus, Ohio, had been her entire world. It was where she transformed bolt after bolt of raw fabric into breathtaking garments. It was also where she hid, across town, inside the gleaming grand ballroom of the Columbus Convention Center. 300 guests sat under towering crystal chandeliers. Waiters in white gloves glided between tables laden with champagne flutes and silver platters. The air hummed with low chatter, the rustle of evening gowns, and the scent of expensive perfume. Today was the 30th anniversary gala of the Pendleton Fashion Group, one of the state's most prestigious luxury houses. At the very front of the room, directly before the main stage, sat Table 1. A velvet-draped chair bore a crisp, embossed place card, Marcus Vance. It remained completely empty. Beside it, Elena sat quietly in a tailored charcoal pantsuit she had stitched herself. She kept her posture straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't look at the empty chair. She didn't need to. The silence radiating from that vacant velvet seat was louder than the orchestra playing in the balcony. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced, her voice echoing through the surround sound speakers. "Would everyone please take their seats? Our program is about to begin." A sympathetic usher leaned down toward Elena, whispering softly, "Mrs. Vance, should we hold the opening for a few minutes? Is your husband stuck in traffic?" Elena looked at the empty chair. Her expression didn't flicker. "No," she said softly. "He isn't coming." "Would you like someone else to sit beside you?" the usher asked gently. "We can fill the seat." Elena turned her head toward the back of the ballroom. Standing near the sound booth, dressed in a neat but slightly ill-fitting navy suit, was a young man. His hands were clasped nervously in front of him. He looked like an outsider, unsure if he belonged in a room full of millionaires and executives. Elena raised a hand and caught his eye. She smiled warmly. "Lucas," she called out softly. Lucas Brooks blinked, startled. He pointed a finger at his own chest in disbelief. "Me, Mrs. Vance?" "Come sit with me," Elena said, her voice firm and clear. Lucas hurried down the long carpeted aisle, his dress shoes making no sound against the thick rug. He slid into the empty chair beside her, exhaling a quiet breath. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small, velvet-lined wooden box on the tablecloth between them. Inside lay an antique pair of silver tailor shears, tarnished, worn, but polished to a mirror shine. "My mother would have wanted me to bring these tonight," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "She always said you had the truest hands in the business." Elena reached out and gently touched the cool silver metal. "Thank you for being here, Lucas." "I wouldn't be anywhere else," he replied. Only 24 hours earlier, the house on Elm Street had been suffocatingly quiet. Elena had been standing in her kitchen, the faint scent of lemon pledge and brewed coffee hanging in the air. The evening breeze rustled the maple tree outside her window, the same tree her mother-in-law had planted decades ago. Her phone screen lit up. The name Marcus flashed across the display. She picked it up on the third ring. "Hello, Marcus." "Hey, Elle." His voice came through the speaker, overly bright, filled with a rushed, nervous energy. "Listen, something came up at the store. A last-minute supplier meeting, out of state." Elena held the phone against her ear, looking out at the darkened yard. "A meeting?" "Yeah, in Cabo," Marcus continued quickly, his breath catching slightly. A major furniture distributor flew in. I have to be there to negotiate the new line. It's a huge opportunity for the store. In the background, behind the low hum of Marcus's voice, Elena heard a sharp clink of ice glasses, followed by a woman's light, melodic laugh. It was Chloe Montgomery's voice, smooth, polished, and unmistakable. "Babe, tell her we'll miss the flight if you don't hurry," Chloe whispered loudly in the background. Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly, lowering his voice. "Anyway, Elle, I won't make it back in time for that Pendleton event tomorrow. You understand, right? Business comes first." "The Pendleton Gala," Elena stated quietly, her voice devoid of anger. "The one we talked about 3 months ago." "Look, it's just a local trade dinner," Marcus snapped, his patience wearing thin. "It's not like it's a real fashion show. You just do alterations for them. We'll celebrate your work next week. I'll take you out to that diner you like." Elena closed her eyes. The quiet in the kitchen felt heavy, suffocating. "Sure, Marcus," she said softly. "Safe flight." She hung up the phone and set it face down on the granite counter. For 15 years, Marcus Vance had drifted away one excuse at a time. It started with missed dinners, then forgotten anniversaries, then weekend trips that always seemed to coincide with her most important moments. He had convinced himself that Elena was simple, content to stay in her basement with her threads and needles, while he chased the illusion of high society alongside Chloe. Elena didn't scream. She didn't throw the phone. She didn't send a bitter text message. Instead, she walked down the hallway to her basement workshop. She sat down at her wooden table, surrounded by rolls of silk, wool, and linen. She picked up her shears, cut a fresh piece of thread, and began to sew. Standing on the stage of the convention center under the blinding spotlights, Mr. Arthur Pendleton stepped up to the podium. He adjusted his glasses and looked directly at table 1. Elena sat up straight, her fingers resting on the silver shears Lucas had brought. The applause in the ballroom hushed as Arthur Pendleton stepped up to the microphone. The silver-haired CEO adjusted his gold-rimmed spectacles and swept his eyes over the crowd. Behind him, 3 massive LED screens flickered to life, glowing with crisp, high-definition photographs. The first image showed a younger Arthur standing beside a sleek mannequin draped in an ethereal navy evening dress. The beadwork shimmered under the stage lights like fallen stars. The crowd gasped softly. It was Pendleton's signature gown from a decade ago, the piece that had put the luxury house on the international map. For 30 years, Arthur's rich voice echoed through the speakers. "Our brand has stood for elegance, precision, and timeless craftsmanship. But tonight, I must confess a secret." He gestured toward the screen. "The public believed I designed this piece. The press praised my vision. But the truth is, I didn't stitch a single bead on that dress, nor did I sketch its lines." A ripple of low murmurs spread across the room. People leaned forward in their chairs. 15 years ago, Arthur continued, a quiet genius walked into my workshop. She didn't ask for fame. She didn't demand her name on the label. She preferred to work in the shadows, letting her hands speak for her. For a decade and a half, she has been Pendleton's ghost designer, creating our most iconic pieces from her home workshop right here in Columbus. The giant screens shifted. Photographs filled the frame. Close-ups of delicate lace, intricate hand embroidery, and seamless seams. Every single shot captured the same pair of slender, calloused hands guiding fabric under a needle. "Her name," Arthur announced, his voice booming with pride, "is Elena Vance." The spotlight swung away from the stage and cut through the darkness. It landed squarely on table 1, bathing Elena in a pool of brilliant white light. Gasps erupted from the executives. Heads turned sharply. Elena sat perfectly still, the white light reflecting off her dark eyes. Beside her, Lucas Brooks smiled, his eyes shining with tears. When we offered Mrs. Vance executive bonuses and royal shares years ago, Arthur explained, his tone growing serious, she declined the cash payouts. Instead, she asked US to channel every penny of her earnings into an irrevocable trust, a legacy fund dedicated to community arts and technical education. Arthur opened a leather-bound folder on the podium. Today, that fund officially matures. The Pendleton Vance Educational Trust holds exactly $800,000. Audible shocks echoed through the hall. People stood up from their tables. The applause started as a patter, then swelled into a thunderous roar. Cameras flashed, red recording lights blinking along the aisles. Elena Vance has chosen the first initiative for this endowment, Arthur said, smiling warmly. The entire $800,000 will build a state-of-the-art community design center and provide full scholarships for underprivileged youth pursuing technical trades. And, at Elena's personal request, the executive director overseeing this fund will be Mr. Lucas Brooks. Lucas froze. His breath hitched in his throat. He looked at Arthur, then turned slowly toward Elena. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Me, Lucas whispered, his voice cracking. Elena leaned toward him and squeezed his hand gently. Your mother spent her life teaching others to sew, Lucas. You spent years teaching kids who had nothing. You earned this. Tears spilled over Lucas's cheeks. He covered his face with his hands as the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. 3,000 miles away, inside a sunlit luxury suite in Cabo, Mexico, the ocean breeze pushed open the sheer curtains. The scent of salt water and expensive tanning oil filled the air. On the marble coffee table, a glass of iced sangria sat beside a flickering flat-screen television. Chloe Montgomery lounged on the velvet sofa in a silk robe, scrolling casually through her phone. On the TV, a local Columbus news station aired a live digital feed of the Pendleton Gala. Suddenly, the screen cut to a close-up of Elena Vance standing beside Arthur Pendleton. A ticker scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Columbus seamstress revealed AS secret designer establishes $800,000 community fund. Chloe stopped scrolling. Her eyes widened. Marcus, she called out, her voice sharp and shrill. Marcus, get out here. Marcus walked out of the bathroom, wiping his face with a plush towel. What's wrong? Look at the TV. Chloe pointed a manicured finger at the screen. Marcus turned. His jaw dropped. The towel slipped from his hands and crumpled onto the floor. On the screen, his wife, the woman he had dismissed as a plain, needy though may, stood under brilliant lights. Beside her sat an $800,000 figure in bold yellow text. The news anchor's voice piped through the speakers. Elena Vance, longtime quiet backbone of Pendleton fashion, honored tonight. Marcus stared. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Before he could process the image, his smartphone began to vibrate furiously on the nightstand. Then Chloe's phone buzzed. Then his business line rang. Buzz, buzz, buzz. One notification after another flooded his screen. Missed calls from his store manager. Text messages from his main furniture suppliers. Social media alerts mentioning his handle in hundreds of angry comments. A notification popped up from his primary investor. Marcus, what is this? Why is the local news showing your wife at a gala while you're in Cabo with another woman? Our clients are canceling orders. Call me immediately. Marcus grabbed his phone with trembling fingers. His palms were slick with cold sweat. Chloe snatched her phone, her eyes darting across her feed. They're posting clips of her. People are asking who the empty chair was for. Marcus, they're tagging your store. They're calling you a fraud. Marcus didn't hear her. He tapped Elena's contact and pressed the phone to his ear. Ring, ring, ring. Voicemail. He dialed again. His breath came in short, panicked gasps. Ring, ring, ring. Voicemail. He tried 82 times in 40 minutes. Outside the convention center in Columbus, the rain had stopped. The night air was cool, smelling of damp pavement and autumn leaves. Elena stepped out of the glass doors. She held a black umbrella in one hand and the heavy brass plaque of the Pendleton Trust in the other. Her phone vibrated again in her coat pocket. The screen lit up with Marcus's name for the 83rd time. She pulled out the device. She looked at the flashing name, her face smooth, unbothered, and completely still. She didn't answer. She swiped the screen face down and slipped it back into her pocket. At the curb, a sleek black town car pulled up, its tires wet against the asphalt. Lucas opened the door for her, holding the frame steady. Across the street, the sharp screech of tires echoed through the dark boulevard as an airport taxi pulled up to the curb. The heavy oak front door of the Elm Street house swung open with a violent thud, slamming against the plaster wall. Outside, a black airport car sat idling at the curb, its headlights cutting through the damp night air. Marcus burst into the foyer, his face flushed red, his tie undone and dangling loosely around his neck. The smell of stale sweat, cheap airport lounge coffee, and ocean air clung to his clothes. Behind him, Chloe marched into the house. High heels clicked loudly against the hardwood floor. Her eyes were sharp, filled with rage. She wore an expensive designer coat, but her hair was disheveled from the frantic 3-hour flight back from Mexico. Elena stood quietly in the center of the living room. She wore a simple cream-colored sweater and dark trousers. Her hands were calm. On the low coffee table in front of her rested 3 large, gray cardboard storage boxes. Beside them sat a single porcelain teacup, steam rising softly into the air. "Are you insane?" Chloe shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceiling. "Do you have any idea what you just did to Marcus? Do you have any idea what you did to us?" Elena didn't blink. She didn't flinch at the noise. She took a slow sip of her tea, set the cup down on its saucer with a soft, quiet clink, and looked at Chloe. "You are in my home, Chloe," Elena said. Her voice was low, smooth, and steady. "Lower your voice." "Don't you tell me to lower my voice." Chloe stepped forward, waving a manicured hand toward Marcus. "People online are calling Marcus a monster. Clients are canceling orders at his store. My PR agency is getting bombarded with messages. You set this up. You engineered that entire television broadcast just to humiliate him because he went to Cabo." Marcus stepped between them, his hands shaking as he pointed a finger at Elena. His voice cracked with anger and panic. $800,000. Elena, $800,000. He paced back and forth across the rug, his shoes squeaking against the wood. "You worked for Pendleton for 15 years. You hid a fortune from me, from your own husband. We could have expanded the furniture store. We could have bought a commercial building in downtown Columbus. We could have invested in high-end inventory. We." Elena repeated softly. "Yes, we." Marcus yelled, chest heaving. "We are married. Everything you earn belongs to this family. Instead, you gave it away to some kid. To Lucas Brooks. You made me look like an idiot on live television. You left an empty chair at that table, just so the whole world would pity you." Elena looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the sweat glistening on his forehead, the veins bulging in his neck, the desperate greed flickering behind his eyes. The fear that used to tighten her chest when he raised his voice was completely gone. In its place was a vast, cold quiet. "I didn't make you look like an idiot, Marcus," Elena said, her words crisp and clear. "You bought a ticket to Cabo. You boarded the plane. You sat beside Chloe while my name was called. You didn't miss my ceremony because of a flight delay. You missed it because you believed I was worthless. That's not the point. Chloe interrupted, taking another step forward. She glared at the 3 gray boxes on the table. The point is that money was accumulated during your marriage. That $800,000 is marital property. Marcus has a legal right to those funds. Elena let out a short, quiet breath that sounded almost like a laugh. She reached down and pulled the lid off the first gray box. "Come here, Marcus," Elena said calmly. "Look inside." Marcus hesitated. He glared at her, but the absolute stillness in her voice drew him forward. He stepped up to the coffee table and looked down into the box. It was filled to the brim with neatly organized folders, white legal envelopes, and stacks of canceled checks. "What is this?" Marcus muttered, frowning. "This is box 1, Elena said. She picked up a thick blue folder and opened it. 12 years ago, you wanted to open your first furniture showroom. The bank refused your loan because you had no collateral and a poor credit score. Do you remember?" Marcus swallowed hard. He didn't answer. "You told me the bank suddenly reconsidered," Elena continued, her voice cutting through the quiet room like a blade. "They didn't reconsider, Marcus. I went to the bank president. I signed an agreement pledging my private design royalties from Pendleton as security. Every month for 7 years, $5,000 from my secret account went straight to the lender to cover your principal." She dropped the blue folder back into the box with a heavy thud. "This box contains the receipts for your store lease," she said. "The down payment for this house. The full payment for the luxury SUV sitting in the driveway right now. The one you drove to the airport to fly to Mexico. You thought you were a self-made businessman. Marcus, you weren't. You were living on my needle and thread." Marcus's face was drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Chloe snatched a stack of paper from the box, scanning the numbers frantically. This doesn't prove anything. You were his wife. Wives support their husbands." "Let's look at box 2, Elena said smoothly. She slid the second box forward and lifted the lid. Inside lay stacks of tuition statements from the Ohio State University Executive MBA program, alongside invoices from high-end tailors, country club membership dues, and receipts for expensive watches. "You told me your store's profits paid for your advanced degree," Elena said, gazing directly into Marcus's eyes. "They didn't. Your store was losing money every winter. I paid your tuition. I paid for the bespoke suits you wore to impress investors. I paid for the country club dues where you met Chloe." Marcus took a step back, his knees visibly trembling. "Elena, you thought you were climbing the social ladder because you were smart," Elena said, her tone devoid of pity. "You were climbing it because I was under the ladder, holding it steady while my hands bled." She picked up the third box. It was smaller than the others. Inside lay a single, faded leather journal and a small cassette tape. "And this is box 3, Elena whispered. She picked up a handwritten letter from the top of the pile. The ink was faded, the paper yellowed at the edges. "This is from your mother, Hannah," Elena said. 3 weeks before she died in the hospice care unit, the care unit that I paid for, she wrote me this letter." Elena unfolded the paper. Her voice remained steady as she read the words aloud. "Dear Elena, my son has his father's ego and his father's blindness. He mistakes noise for strength and money for worth. You give him everything, my dear girl, but if you give him too much, he will forget how to earn anything himself. Do not hide your sacrifices from him forever. A man who does not know what his bread costs will eventually spit it out." Elena folded the paper neatly and set it back inside the box. Silence descended upon the living room, heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The tick of the hallway clock sounded like hammer blows against wood. Marcus stared at the boxes. His shoulders slouched. The arrogant posture he had carried into the house melted away, leaving behind a small, broken man surrounded by the evidence of his own hollow life. I didn't know, Marcus choked out, his voice barely a whisper. Elena, I swear I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked, Elena replied softly. You preferred the lie. It was easier to believe you were a king, and I was just a plain woman who washed your shirts. Chloe's eyes darted between Marcus and the boxes. Her face turned red with frustration. Marcus, stop it. Don't let her manipulate you with old papers. We need to handle the press. The store is losing money right now. If your reputation is ruined, my agency's brand goes down with it. Marcus turned his head, slowly. He looked at Chloe. For the first time, he saw the sharp, cold calculation in her eyes. He saw the panic of a woman who wasn't worried about his heart, but about her own public image and financial investment. Shut up, Chloe, Marcus said, his voice flat. Chloe gasped. What did you just say to me? I said shut up, Marcus shouted, turning on her. Can't you see what happened here? Can't you see what I did? You did what any ambitious man would do. Chloe snapped, her voice turning cold as ice. You moved on from a boring marriage. But if you're going to stand here and cry over old receipts while your business burns, then you're even dumber than she made you look on TV. Chloe grabbed her designer bag from the sofa. She looked at Marcus with utter contempt. Don't call me. My agency is severing all ties with your store effective tonight. She turned on her heel and marched out of the house. The front door slammed shut behind her, the heavy glass rattling in its frame. The room fell quiet once more. Marcus stood alone in the center of the floor. He looked at the 3 boxes. He looked at the simple porcelain teacup on the table. Then he looked at Elena. Elle, he whispered, his eyes filling with real tears. Please, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I'll fire Chloe. I'll fix the store. We can start over. Please. Elena stood up. She picked up a white paper envelope that had been resting under her teacup all along. She slid it across the wooden table until it rested beside the 3 gray boxes. Inside was a copy of a divorce petition, neatly printed, signed, and dated. I am not angry with you, Marcus, Elena said quietly. Her voice was as gentle as a summer rain, but as firm as granite. Anger requires caring about what you do next. I don't. Marcus stared at the envelope. Elena, please. The house is yours, she said, picking up her coat and her leather handbag from the chair. The SUV is yours. The store is yours. Keep them all. I kept the thread, Marcus, and with thread, I can build anything. She walked past him toward the front door. She didn't look back. The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the new loft in Short North, Columbus. The air smelled of fresh white paint, polished oak, and strong, dark espresso. Elena Vance stood before a full-length mirror. Gone was the heavy, dark charcoal suit of her past. She wore a tailored ivory silk blouse with crisp, clean lines and dark navy trousers. Her long, dark hair, once pinned into an aging, tight bun, was now cut into a sharp, modern shoulder-length bob. She looked at her reflection. She didn't see an invisible seamstress anymore. She saw a woman who owned her own story. Over the last 6 months, Elena had executed her transition with absolute precision. She hadn't cried. She hadn't posted bitter messages online. She hadn't played the victim. Instead, she took control. First came the legal separation and financial division. She let Marcus keep the house, the SUV, and the debt-laden furniture store. In exchange, she retained complete ownership of her private design intellectual property and her independent brand name, Elena Vance Studio. Second came her personal transformation. She hired a financial planner to manage her personal investments. She began working out every morning at sunrise, feeling strength return to her legs and core. She bought clothes that reflected her own taste, not the conservative expectations of Marcus's social circle. Third came her career. In partnership with Lucas Brooks, she officially opened the Pendleton Vance Community Art and Design Center. The center occupied a restored brick warehouse in the heart of the arts district. High timber ceilings exposed brick walls, and large industrial windows allowed natural light to flood the workspace. Rows of shiny new sewing machines, digital drafting tables, and bolts of vibrant fabric lined the floor. Elena walked through the main studio. The room hummed with life. 20 young students, many from low-income neighborhoods, sat at the workstations. Scissors snipped through denim. Steam hissed from iron presses. Laughter and eager chatter filled the air. Lucas walked over, holding 2 ceramic mugs of coffee. He wore a crisp, white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking confident and energized. "The morning workshop is full," Lucas said, handing her a mug. "We have a waiting list of 40 students for next semester." Elena took a sip, the warm liquid comforting. "How are the scholarship candidates doing?" "Incredible," Lucas smiled. 3 of our high school seniors just got accepted into the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. Full tuition. Elena looked out over the studio floor. A young girl with bright, wide eyes was carefully guiding red velvet under a needle. Elena walked over and knelt beside her, gently adjusting the girl's fingers on the fabric. "Keep your wrists loose, Maya," Elena advised softly. "Let the machine pull the cloth. Don't force it." The girl smiled as the stitches formed a perfect, straight line. "Like this, Miss Vance?" "Exactly like that," Elena praised. While Elena's life expanded into light and purpose, Marcus Vance's world slowly imploded. Without Elena's quiet financial backing, the reality of his business crashed down upon him. The furniture store struggled under heavy monthly leases. Suppliers demanded immediate payment up front, no longer willing to extend credit to a man whose public reputation had taken a devastating blow. Chloe Montgomery had wiped her hands clean of him, taking her PR firm's influence elsewhere. The luxury SUV was repossessed by the bank. Marcus was forced to sell the house on Elm Street at a loss to cover his mounting debts. He moved into a small, cramped, 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. For the first time in his life, he had to scrub his own kitchen counters, iron his own shirts, and calculate his monthly grocery bill down to the last cent. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Marcus drove his beat-up second-hand sedan past the Short North Arts District. Through the large glass windows of the community center, he saw Elena. She was standing under bright halogen lights, surrounded by students, journalists, and local business leaders. She was laughing freely, her posture tall, her face radiant and full of life. She wore a sharp emerald blazer that caught the light with every movement. Marcus parked at the curb, staring through his rain-streaked windshield. He didn't see the quiet, submissive woman who used to wait for him in a basement workshop. He saw a stranger, a powerful, elegant, self-made woman who had never actually needed him at all. He placed his hands on the steering wheel and lowered his head. The bitter realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost the most extraordinary person he would ever know simply because he was too blind to value what was right in front of him. Back inside the studio, the afternoon class wrapped up. The students packed their bags, calling out cheerful goodbyes as they filed out into the cool evening air. Elena walked to her private office at the back of the warehouse. On her desk sat a freshly printed copy of Columbus Monthly magazine. The cover featured a stunning photograph of her standing among her students, with the bold headline, "Elena Vance, Building a Legacy from Thread and Purpose." She looked at the cover. She felt no arrogance, no need for revenge against Marcus, and no resentment for the past. All the anger that had once weighed down her heart had evaporated, replaced by a deep, immovable peace. She walked over to the tall glass window overlooking the courtyard. The soft glow of the late afternoon sun streamed through the arching glass windows of the Pendleton Vance Community Art and Design Center. Outside, the autumn breeze rustled the golden leaves along the cobblestone streets of the Short North District. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the comforting scent of freshly brewed coffee, polished cedar wood, and new cotton fabric. Today marked the one-year anniversary of the center's opening. Brightly colored banners hung from the exposed timber beams. Dozens of student mannequins stood proudly along the perimeter, wearing intricate jackets, tailored dresses, and hand-woven scarves. Parents, local artists, business owners, and journalists filled the main floor, their voices creating a cheerful, energetic hum. Elena Vance stood near the center stage. She wore an elegant burgundy silk wrap dress that draped gracefully, paired with simple silver jewelry. Her eyes were bright, her posture relaxed and confident. She moved easily among the guests, laughing with parents and congratulating students on their displayed work. In the back row of the auditorium, seated quietly near the entrance doors, sat Marcus Vance. He wore a plain, dark gray suit, neatly pressed but clearly off the rack. His hair was trimmed neatly, though streaks of silver had appeared at his temples. He held a small program in his hands, his fingers resting still against the paper. He didn't hide in the shadows, nor did he demand attention. He sat quietly, observing the room with a calm, humbled expression. When the opening remarks began, Lucas Brooks stepped up to the podium. He adjusted the microphone, his smile wide as he looked out at the packed room. 1 year ago, Lucas spoke into the mic, his voice echoing clearly through the hall. We opened these doors with a simple belief that art and trade skills should belong to everyone, not just those who can afford expensive tuition. Today, our students have proved what happens when someone believes in them. The audience applauded warmly. Lucas looked toward the front row and gestured with his hand. None of this would exist without the vision, sacrifice, and unwavering strength of our founder and creative director, Elena Vance. The room erupted into applause. People stood up from their seats, cheering and clapping. Elena walked up the wooden steps to the stage. She accepted the microphone from Lucas with a warm nod. She waited a moment for the applause to settle, looking out at the faces before her. She saw young students beaming with pride beside their families. She saw Mr. Arthur Pendleton nodding approvingly from the front row. And at the very back, she met Marcus's gaze. There was no tension in her chest, no surge of anger, no lingering sting of betrayal, and no urge to prove anything to him. The past had lost its power to hurt her. "Thank you," Elena said, her voice smooth, clear, and resonant. "When I first picked up a needle 30 years ago, I thought my job was simply to hold pieces of cloth together. But over time, I learned that the most important thing we ever sew is our own character." She looked at her students. Life will sometimes tear away what you thought was permanent. It will force you to stand alone in the quiet. But remember this, you are the designer of your own life. Never let anyone else hold the shears to your worth. The crowd stood once more, their applause filling the high ceilings of the warehouse. After the official ceremony concluded, guests moved toward the refreshment tables. Elena stepped down from the stage to speak with a group of local press representatives. As the crowd slowly began to thin out, Marcus stepped forward from the back row. He waited patiently near the display racks until Elena finished her conversation with a reporter. When she turned around, Marcus offered a small, respectful smile. "Hello, Elena," Marcus said softly. His voice was steady, free of the demanding, defensive tone he used to carry. "Hello, Marcus," Elena replied politely, her expression calm and open. I wanted to come and see the center, Marcus said, looking around at the bustling room. The students, their work is incredible. You've built something truly amazing here. Thank you, Elena said. It took a lot of hard work from everyone involved. Marcus paused, looking down at his hands for a brief second before meeting her eyes again. I also wanted to say thank you. Elena tilted her head slightly. For what? For not destroying me when you had every right to, Marcus answered honestly. When you walked out that night, I thought my life was over. I was angry. I blamed everyone else. But living alone, having to take responsibility for my own mistakes, it forced me to wake up. He took a slow breath, his eyes sincere. I learned how much things actually cost, Elena. Not just money, but effort, loyalty, and time. I am truly sorry for the years I took you for granted. Elena looked at him quietly. She saw the genuine shift in his mindset. He was no longer playing the victim or blaming the world. He had taken responsibility for his own path. I accept your apology, Marcus, Elena said gently, and I am glad you found your way. I wish you peace and success with your work. Marcus nodded, a quiet sense of relief washing over his face. Thank you, Elena. Goodbye. Goodbye, Marcus. He turned and walked out through the double glass doors, stepping out into the crisp autumn air with his head held high, at peace with the past. Elena walked out onto the private second-floor balcony overlooking the courtyard. The sun was sinking below the horizon, casting a breathtaking golden light across the city of Columbus. The sky burned in brilliant shades of amber, violet, and deep gold, the true golden hour. Lucas stepped out onto the balcony, holding 2 clean cups of hot tea. He handed one to her, without a word, standing quietly by her side. Below them, students were walking out into the courtyard, laughing and chatting under the warm string lights. Elena leaned against the wooden railing. The cool breeze brushed gently against her face, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and rain-washed pavement. She took a sip of tea and looked out into the vast, glowing sky. She was completely free, deeply peaceful, and immensely proud of the life she had stitched together with her own 2 hands. She smiled, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and breathed in the quiet perfection of her own golden hour. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.